dog bark, aren't they? Alright, so I think it's about time that I make my Fujifilm X-T30 video. This camera, I bought it on release day, or I received it on release day, and I've had it ever since, and I've been using it pretty much non-stop. It's become my everyday camera. It's taken over from my X-T20, which is now my studio camera. It just stays on a tripod in here all the time. I think that this camera is probably the best value for money camera that Fujifilm has ever made, and I say that knowing that I think I recently said that about the X-T100, which is still a phenomenal camera, but for an all-around video and photo camera, the X-T100 is a great photo camera. It's a pretty rough video camera. This is an incredible video camera and a very, very good photography camera as well. If you guys saw my X-T3 video when I was in Dublin, you saw some video and some photos from that camera. Basically, the performance of this is identical. There's a slight difference in the internal 4K recording. Obviously, you only get one card slot with this guy, whereas with the X-T3 you get two. The ergonomics are a little different. That's why I've got this L-plate grip on it, just to give me a slightly beefier grip than this thing has normally. Like, I don't have the biggest hands, but I like a little bit more of a grip, so I always try to throw one of these L plates on any of these small mirrorless cameras I use. It's not weather sealed. The control dial layout's a little different. You lose the dedicated ISO dial in favor of a mode dial, which I'm okay with. You can change, there's two other dials I believe that you can change for ISO. You can make this front or this rear dial ISO. There are also buttons, those dials, which is nice. One thing I will say, and I complained about it briefly in one of my GFX 50R videos, is this little button right here, this Q button right on this thumb rest. So you can see there's a thumb rest right here. So when you're holding the camera, your thumb wants to sit here, but your thumb actually wants to sit right here. I wish this thumb rest was over or just extended just a hair, and this Q button wasn't here, because I do not like the placement of this Q button. Like, I really, really don't like where this is. I'm hitting it all the time, and apparently there's a firmware upgrade coming. There has been a firmware upgrade where they put a bit of a delay on this Q button, so when you press it, it takes like a split second. You have to hold it for the Q button to come up. I'm still triggering it every single time, so that it needs to be like a good 2-second press. Other than that, I mean, I just hit the menu button here and it goes into my quick menu and gives me 7 or 8, I think, maybe 9, or is it 8 options on the screen back here of things I can quickly change. I would much rather use that than have this Q button. I think they're redundant to have both of them, so they could ditch this and even make this back button focus. That would be way better in this spot, or just have this be reprogrammable to anything. Have it just be a function button, make it customizable to be whatever, just not a Q button. I can't get over how horribly placed this is. Like, did nobody pick this camera up in pre-production and say, yeah, this Q button's in the way. I hit it every time I use this camera, because I hit it every time I use this camera. Performance-wise, very similar to the X-T3. It's got a really good burst rate. The autofocus, especially tracking autofocus, is among the best I've ever used. The face detection on this thing is startlingly good. And the eye detection works incredibly well too. I'm not going to dive into that really deeply. There's a bunch of other videos out there with some great testing for that. Obviously this has the elimination of the D-pad, similar to the XE3. I'm okay with it, actually. I just shot with the GFX 50R a bunch that didn't have a D-pad, and as long as I lock this joystick out so that I have to press and hold it to then use it to move like autofocus points or whatever, then it's fine. You have the ability to do that. Not like this Q button. I'm not going to talk about the Q button anymore because it really is a minor thing in an otherwise fantastic camera. Dimensionally, this thing is identical to its two predecessors, so the X-T10 and the X-T20, so any accessories you have for this camera are going to transfer straight across, and you can just use them on your new camera. So like I have a cage, I have a grip, I have a case, oh no, I sold my case actually. My ass is ringing. What else can I say about this camera? If you're going to get this camera, if this is your first Fujifilm X series camera, they offer a kit that comes with the 15 to 45 power zoom kit lens, which I use in the studio because I can control the lighting, and it's fairly wide. 15 millimeters is a nice length, nice focal length for video, especially in this sort of an environment. But it's not a very good lens. Like, it's usable, but spend the extra bucks and get the XF kit lens, the 18 to 55 2.8 to 4, f2.8 to 4. This is one of the best kit lenses I've ever used for photography and for videography. It is outstanding. That extra stop of light down to 2.8 at the wide end is great. So you're essentially getting an 18 millimeter f2.8 lens. And then if you want to keep it a constant aperture, 18 to 55 f4 lens, which is really good as well. But the f2.8 at the wide end is great. This is such a good lens. For travel, I would have no problem taking this lens and then the handy dandy little plastic XC50 to 230 telephoto lens, and that covers all your bases for lenses right off the bat. And if you want to start diving into primes and stuff after that, you totally can. But this is a great place to start. Yeah, I mean, I've taken this thing to some indoor charity events. I've taken it, shot some indoor charity events just as a guest, but like I bring a camera everywhere I go because I'm that guy. I brought this thing to Disneyland on a secret trip that I was on recently that maybe I'll tell you guys about one day, but I'll show you some pictures. I can't really tell you why I was there, but I was there, and Disneyland's pretty great. I brought this thing to the migratory bird sanctuary here in town earlier today, actually, because it's Bird Week here in Vancouver, which apparently is a thing, and I didn't know that. I go to the bird sanctuary all the time, but it's Bird Week, so there you go. Look it up. It performed exactly as I expected it to. The X-T20 was a fantastic camera, and this is every bit as good and improved in almost every single way. The only thing I will say, and people want to argue with me about this in the comments, that's fine. The low light performance has taken just an infinitesimal step backwards, and I think that's a sacrifice they knowingly made for video quality, and I'm totally fine with that. It's still very good. It's better than the first generation X series cameras. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm pretty sure I've been rolling pictures across my face here the whole time I've been talking. And yeah, the X-T30, this XT 2-digit line, so you've got the XT 1-digit, which is the XT1, XT2, XT3, and the XT is the like SLR looking center viewfinder fake prism sort of looking camera. This is the consumer grade version of the XT line, so XT10, XT20, XT30, and then they've got the X with the 3 digits, and they only have the XT100. I'm assuming there'll be an XT200 as well, which I'd be pretty interested to see what they do with that, because I found that to be an excellent camera with some really interesting features like that flip screen. It's the only thing that I wish they would have done with this camera was to put that XT100 flip out screen on it, because it was an awesome screen. It flipped the exact same way as this one from the back, but then it also turned to face fully forward, which I thought was an excellent touch. And I really, really wish that they would have implemented that here. But it would have added some thickness to the camera, I think, which would have made all of your accessories not fit. So you take the good with the bad. And the autofocus on this thing is so good. that you don't really need that screen to check focus if you're you know, holding it out like this vlogging, which I know a lot of you aren't interested in. People get really mad when I talk about vlogging. Oh, you vloggers, you vloggers. I don't vlog. Rarely do you see me out in the world with a camera out in front of my face. I used to do it. It's really awkward. I still do it sometimes, but not that often, and really only generally to test. I've got the X-A10 up here shooting B-roll down here, which I can see my exposure is way off. So I doubt I'm going to be using that footage. Maybe I can fix it in post. I doubt it though. It's pretty crunchy. Fujifilm X-T30, I think if you're looking to upgrade from the X-T20, that might be a tough call. There's not a ton of difference between the two. If you're doing a lot of video work, I would say it's probably worth upgrading, but if you're just shooting photos with a little bit of video, the 20 is probably still totally fine. But if you're coming from like an X-T10 or an X-T1 or an X-E2 or 2S, definitely worth the upgrade. All right, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.